All right, welcome to another English challenge. Now, this challenge is going to start really easy, but it's going to get harder and harder and harder. So I want you to keep track of your score and let me know down in the comments how many you get right and how many you get wrong after this lesson. Okay, so let's imagine this woman is pregnant with two babies. Okay, what's that called? What are those two babies called? Well, that's easy, right? They're called twins. Okay, now let's imagine that she's pregnant with three babies. Wow, what's that called? Well, it's called triplets. Triplets, okay? Now look at the first part of this word here. Try. Does that look familiar? Well, you might be thinking of a shape called a triangle. Okay, so this shape is called a triangle. Why? Because it has three sides. Okay, so in this lesson, you might want to pay attention to some of these patterns. Okay, now it's very rare for humans to have more than three, right? I mean, even three, even triplets is rare. Do you know anyone with triplets or more than triplets? That would be crazy to be pregnant with with three or more babies. Okay, but actually with animals, it's very common. You know, for animals like dogs or cats or mice or pigs, you know, they always, I don't know if always, but it's normal for them to have a batch of more than one, right? And that batch is called a litter. A litter. Okay, so with animals, we don't use words like twins or triplets. It's just a litter. Okay, so when your dog has a batch of babies, that's called a litter, right? They have one litter and they might have four or five or six, and then a few months later they get pregnant again and then have another litter. Okay, so that's called litter. Now we just use this word for animals. Okay, we don't use it for humans. I mean, you can use it for humans in like a joking way. You might hear a parent say, you know, they hear my kids, this is my litter. So then they're talking about their kids, just sort of as a funny way. They're using this word. They don't mean their kids were all born at the same time. Okay, but with animals, when we talk about a litter, okay, we mean that they were all born at the same time. So, like I said, your dog might have a litter this month, and then a few months later, it might have another litter. Okay, so then those are two different litters. Okay, so just remember we use this word for animals, we don't use it for humans. Okay, so what about four? Four, wow. Okay, well, four is called quadruplets. Quadruplets. Wow, okay, so look at this. Quad. Quad. Have you seen that before? Well, this vehicle is called a quad. Isn't that awesome? Now, do you know why it's called a quad? Well, because it has four wheels, right? So that's why it's called a quad. It's also called a four-wheeler. You can call it either one, a four-wheeler or a quad. Okay, so in this lesson, I want you to pay attention to these prefixes, okay? A prefix is sort of a small piece of a word sort of at the beginning, right? If it's at the end, then it's called a suffix. But if it's at the beginning, then it's called a prefix. Like, these common ones, miss, like misinformation, right? You see the word information, but then you see the word miss. Okay, so misinformation means false information, right? So if I were to tell you, hey, Justin Trudeau is my best friend, okay, then that would be misinformation. I would be giving you misinformation because it's not true, right? Trudeau is not my friend. I don't even know him. He doesn't even know who I am. He's probably never heard of Mad English TV, unfortunately. Hey, you should tell him to subscribe to my channel. Mad English TV is the best place to be, right? Everybody should be subscribed to my channel. Okay, so let's talk about five. Do you know five? Now, this is where it gets a bit hard. You probably don't know this. Okay, well, I'll tell you. Five is quintuplets. Quintuplets. Okay, now look at this prefix, quin. Have you heard that in any other word? I can't think of any other word with it, okay? So sometimes English sort of follows a pattern and sometimes it doesn't. So, that's just one of the confusing things about English. Sometimes there's a pattern, sometimes there isn't. So with this, Quinn, if you didn't get that, I forgive you. I understand because it's harder, right? 5. Quinn. Anyway, okay, let's go on to 6. What's 6? Okay, I'll tell you. 6 is called sextuplets. Okay, sextuplets. Now, this word has nothing to do with sex. Okay, sex is just a prefix that it means 6. Okay, it's on some words in English. Okay, it's not very common, but just remember it has nothing to do with sex. Okay, now 7 is septuplets. Septuplets. Did you get it right? I told you it's getting harder and harder, right? So septuplets. What about 8? Ooh, now with 8, I think you can predict it. Okay, think about an animal that lives in the sea and it has 8 legs. Sort of a weird, creepy looking animal. I don't know if I would rather meet a shark in the ocean. Like if I was swimming in the ocean, I don't know if I'd rather encounter a shark or an octopus. Those things are scary. Have you ever seen an octopus in real? I've seen an octopus in a zoo, and those things are just freaky. I would be scared to death to see an octopus in real life, like if I were swimming in the ocean. Okay, so can you guess what it's gonna be? It's gonna be octuplets. Octuplets, okay? So here we can predict it, right? So like I said, sometimes, you can predict it. Sometimes you can't. So octuplets. Okay, now what about 9? Do you know 9? I'll tell you. The answer is dead, right? If you have 9 babies, you're probably going to die. Poor woman having 9 babies. So to be honest, I have no idea. And I think most native English speakers would have no clue what a batch of 9 babies. It'd probably start with an N with 9, but there's no point in learning stuff that even native English speakers don't know, right? So I don't want to teach you useless stuff that even 99% of, native English speakers might even struggle with some of those, like quintuplets or septuplets, right? These words are pretty rare. Like I said, this doesn't happen every day. So I think, but I think most native English speakers would get from like 2 to 8 pairs, or not a pair. Pair is another word for 2. Okay, twins, triplets, quadruplets, quintuplets, sextuplets. What was after sextuplets? Septuplets, octuplets. So I think a lot of native English speakers would know those, but anything after 8 is completely useless because I don't even know if it's ever happened. Has it ever happened in history? Has a woman ever been pregnant with 9 babies? I don't know. That would just be insane. Now, these prefixes can be a bit confusing because when we talk about shapes, we use prefixes as well, but they can be a bit different. Okay, so with triangle, it's the same, right? Triangle, and triplets. It's the same prefix, but with shapes, very often it's different, okay? Like this shape here has 5 sides. It's called a pentagon. A pentagon, okay? So pent can also mean 5, okay? And if it would have 6 sides, then it would be called a hexagon. A hexagon. And 7 sides would be a heptagon, not a septagon. Okay, so it can be a bit confusing, right? To have one set of prefixes for a batch of babies. A group. Batch means group, right? And then another set of prefixes for shapes. So like I said, English can be a bit confusing sometimes. Sometimes there's a pattern that you can follow, but sometimes there's not a pattern, right? It's the same with verbs. When you're learning English verbs, there are regular verbs like this, like rob, robbed, right? He robbed the bank. Okay, so to make this verb past tense, you just put ed. Right? It's easy. A lot of verbs are like that. But there are lots of verbs as well that are irregular, like steal. You can't say he stealed the money. He stealed the money. No, you have to say he stole the money. Okay, so when you're learning English, it's a good idea. It's good practice to try to identify patterns. But you need to know that sometimes there is no pattern, and sometimes you just have to learn it, as it is, unfortunately, like these irregular verbs. But very often there is a pattern. It's good to exercise your brain to try to figure out what those patterns are. Okay, so let's try to predict what it would be called if she was pregnant with 100 babies. If she had 100 babies at one time, man, that would be crazy, right? What do you think it would be called? Can you think of any other words that have 100? Well, I can think of some, and I would predict that it would be called centuplets. Okay, that would be my prediction. Now, why do I predict that? Because a century is 100 years. Okay, $1 is 100 cents. Okay, a centipede has 100 legs. Okay, that's why it's called this. Look at this crazy animal. Do you like centipedes? I don't know. They're sort of neutral. I'm not afraid of them. I'm like spiders, scorpions. Those are sort of crazy animals. Those are dangerous, right? I don't know if centipedes. Actually, I know centipedes are. I think some of them can be pretty dangerous. Okay, but just looking at them, I'm not afraid of them. Spiders are just creepy, but centipedes, yeah, they're not that creepy. But now I'm not sure if centipedes have 100 legs exactly, or if that's just sort of a ballpark figure. Ballpark figure means just an estimate. Okay, if something is a ballpark figure, you're just estimating, how many. Let's take this idea and try to make an estimate with 1,000. If she was pregnant with 1,000 babies, what do you think? What would your estimate be? 1,000. Can you think of any words in English that have to do with 1,000? Well, what's 1,000 years called? It's called a millennium. Okay, so I would say millenuplets or millenuplets. Okay, so did I tell you 1,000 years? Oh yeah, here. Okay, 1,000 years is a millennium. Okay, so that's what I would use to make a guess. Now I could be wrong, I could be right. Who knows? It's probably never happened. But because of my experience in English and my experience with this word, I would just take a guess. Okay, so sometimes in English, it's good to just take a guess. You might be right, you might be wrong. It's okay. It's okay to try to make predictions. Like I said, it's a good exercise, okay? So let's do some homework, okay? Look at this animal. Do you know what this animal is called? Well, if you don't know, try to make a prediction. Okay, I'll give you a hint. It's not a centipede because it has more than 100 legs. It actually has 1,000 legs. Okay, so take a guess. What's your prediction? Let me know your guess down there in the comments. Let me know how many you got right, how many you got wrong. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day wherever you are, and I'll see you over in the next episode of Mad English TV. Take care.